Good morning. Before we jump into the sermon this morning, as we were worshiping, I was thinking about Isaiah chapter 64, where Isaiah says, God, rend the heavens and come down. And there's times where we want God to come in like the Kool-Aid man. Just kind of kick through the wall, rend the heavens. But immediately I started thinking about the baptism of Jesus. And in Mark it says that the heavens were torn, and then the dove descended upon him. And in Jewish thought, the dove was associated with creation. Because when the Spirit hovered over the waters before God created all, it says that the Spirit hovered like a dove. When God wants to do something new in our lives, sometimes we want Him to kick down the wall, but oftentimes it comes in much more subtly. God is gentle like a dove. So that's my prayer for Rachel. That's my prayer for us as a community as we're going through this, that just the Holy Spirit would just come in and just be that gentle presence as He's renewing us and He's recreating us and He's helping us to be the men and women He wants us to be. So let's pray. Father, we thank You so much for this morning. We thank You for Your presence. We thank You that You have come in like a gentle dove, and we pray that You just rest upon us as not only do You create, but You recreate. In Your name, amen. All right, how many of you guys are good at spelling? Couple hands. How many of you thank God for spell check? Yeah, we got a couple people in here who struggle with spelling. I've never been good at spelling. I always struggled with it. I was always the first person to sit down during the spelling test. How many of you how am I supposed to spell Czechoslovakia when I can't even spell my mom's name? Which is Marietta, M-A-R-I-E-T-T-A. I think it's one of the things that's interesting about spelling is that there's only 12% of words are spelt the way they sound. Only 12% of words are spelt the way they sound. And you think about words like the two. Why is there so many different ways to spell two? T-O, T-O-O, T-W-O, the number two, if you're feeling lazy. One of the things that makes spelling so frustrating is because so many of them aren't spelled the way they sound. For example, Wednesday. Why is there a silent D in the middle of Wednesday? Let's just get rid of it. Why is it even there? Or let's think about the word as asthma. T and H are not necessary in the middle of that. So let's give spelling challenge kids and spelling challenge adults a break, and let's get rid of all those unnecessary letters. Come on, Webster. The word Americans struggle with the most, though, is the word gray. Gray. How would you spell gray? How many of you guys spell gray G-R-E-Y? How many of you spell it G-R-A-Y? You are all correct because the English language is stupid. It is spelled both ways, and I think it's interesting that life, like the English language, is not always black and white, it's gray. However you spell it. Life is gray. Life is difficult. Life has tension. In fact, you think about the tension between suffering and blessing. Listen to this promise that Jesus makes in the Gospel of Mark. Mark chapter 10, verse 29 through 30. It says, "Truly I tell you," Jesus replied, "no one who has left home or brothers or sisters or mother or father or children or fields for me and the gospel will fail to receive 100 times as much in this present age." How many of you like that? Promise of 100-fold. Homes, brothers, sisters, mothers, children, and fields, along with persecutions. How many of you like that part? How about just the blessings, Jesus, without the sufferings? And in the age to come, eternal life. The phrase receive 100 times fold comes from the life of Isaac in the book of Genesis. He had planted a crop, and God says that he was blessed to the extent that he was given 100 times fold. He went from having like a mom and pop shop to a Costco. God just blessed him abundantly or richly. And Mark picks up on this, and Jesus says that I'm going to bless you, and I'm going to bless you the way that Isaac was blessed, but along with persecutions. Along with persecution. Why couldn't you just leave those three words out? Just the blessings without the sufferings. While we wish that accepting Jesus meant health, wealth, and a trophy on the shelf, there's times that it comes with difficulty and suffering. In the words of the theologian Annie, it's a hard knot life. It's a hard knock life for us. Unfortunately, I only know the Jay-Z version. All right, in the words, life is a mixture of riches and stitches. We have difficulties that we have to face. While we all want the blessed life, can blessing and suffering coexist? And even more importantly, can suffering ever be a blessing? Can suffering ever be a blessing? If you type the word #blessed in Instagram, you'll get over 140 million posts. 140 million posts on the #blessed life. And it's interesting the things that people list as being #blessed. You'll see pictures of dream vacations, a lot of six-pack abs, one lady who is having twins. Not sure she's going to say #blessed at 3 in the morning, but for now she feels #blessed. And according to Instagram, we live in a world that's crowded with #blessed people. People who are surrounded by blessings, but are all these things signs of God's blessing? Do earthly riches equal heavenly kisses? And is Jeff Bezos the most blessed person on the world? I hope not. One of the lessons of Scripture is that God can bless you with things, but things don't mean that you're blessed. And this is important. God can bless you with things, but things don't automatically mean that you are blessed. I think some people walk around with a false sense of spiritual security because they're like, man, look at my stuff, look at my status, God must like me. I mean, think about how many award shows where a person gets up, I just want to thank God for this album. God is not glorified by that album. Think about the things that they said in that album, the lifestyle that they're living. Just because you have things doesn't mean that God has blessed you. I'm too blessed to be stressed, depressed, or have anything less than God's best. The American way. Have you ever met someone who always just seems to have the hookup? You know, they always seem to get like the free coffee. You know, they always seem to get like the great parking spot, the promotions at work. Their hair always looks great, even in a Zumba class. Yeah, all you got to do is sneeze, and it looks like you're transforming into a werewolf. Yeah, your hair's all messed up. Is this a sign that God likes them more than you? No. We're not always good at distinguishing between blessing and cursing. There are some times where something feels like a curse in our life, but in reality, it is a blessing. Take this dad joke, for example. Where do you take someone who's been injured in a peekaboo contest? The ICU. Is that a blessing or is that a curse? We'll never know. Or how about this, for example? You know, eyelashes are meant to protect us from things getting into our eyes, and yet 90% of the time what gets into our eyes is eyelashes. Isn't that ironic? Yeah, is that a blessing or a cursing? We'll never know. You know, some of you were like, ooh, and some of you are like, which one is it? We don't know. Maybe it's both. But the reason why this is so important is because just like that joke, we have a hard time distinguishing what is blessings in our life and what is cursings in our life. Sickness and struggles don't mean the absence of God's blessing. Just like having great stuff in your life doesn't always mean God's blessing or God's smile on your life. We're going to see that in the book of Job. I know that's why you all came out excited, because you're like, we're finally to the book of Job, Pastor Dan, the one I have waited for. What is the first book of the Bible? Correct, but also not correct. Chronologically correct. Historically, it's Job. Job takes place at around the same time as Abraham, or with the patriarchs. It is technically the first book or the oldest book of the Bible, because Genesis was written at the time of Moses. So, Job is technically the oldest. Before we read in the words, let there be light, we run into a book where we see where the light goes out, where a person has to live with some darkness. It's about a man who has the blessing of God, but also suffers. Job chapter 1, verse 1 says, in the land of Uz, there lived a man whose name was Job. Everyone say Uz. Not Oz, Uz. There's no scarecrow pointing you to the way of Uz. In fact, we're giving a very vague description of where Uz is. It's in the land of the east. No mail carrier is going to be excited about that for directions. Someone's not getting their mail. It's just in the east. You'll find it eventually. The east is a technical term associated with the Sinai Desert, stretching from the Mesopotamia to Arabia. Okay? Now, the reason why this is important is because at this time, the people groups were the Edomites, the Ammonites, and the Moabites. Notice which group is missing: the Israelites. Job is not an Israelite. Job is not an Israelite. And this is the reason why the address is so important. And yet, Job is in a very important book in the Jewish Bible, in the Israelite community. But he himself is not an Israelite. Job finds prominent position here, which shows the power of his story. Every culture, every citizen, every century has struggled with the question of, why do good people suffer? Why do bad things happen to good people? The name Job is debated by scholars, and it has two different meanings. One of them is the enemy of God. Thank you, Mom and Dad, for that. And the other one is, where is the divine Father? Not much of an upgrade. But it perfectly foreshadows the struggle that Job is going to go through. Job's name is perfectly haunting. He will wrestle with feeling abandoned and abused by God. Job will wrestle for 42 chapters. Well, out of 42 chapters, he'll wrestle for 40 chapters. You have your prologue and your epilogue. But he will wrestle for 40 chapters. Job chapter 1, verse 1 through 3. This man was blameless and upright. He feared God and shunned evil. He had 7 sons and 3 daughters, and he owned 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, and 500 donkeys, and had a large number of servants. He was the greatest man among all the peoples of the east. Everyone say the greatest. Job was the greatest. If there was a TV show based on him, it would have been called Lifestyles of the Rich and Blameless. That's how Job was remembered. When the story of Job starts out, his life is literally a 10 out of 10. Did you notice all the numbers that were being outlined there? When you add them up, he has 7 sons and how many daughters? 3. So that equals 10. 7,000 sheep and 3,000 camels. That equals 10,000. 500 yoke of oxen and 500 donkeys, which equals 1,000. He literally had a life of 10 out of 10. He had the Midas touch. But in one chapter, he'll go from Midas touch to Midas touch, and he will lose just about everything. Here's an abbreviated version of Job 1, 14 through 19. Worst day ever. It says, a messenger came to Job and said, the Sabaeans attacked. I am the only one who has escaped. Another messenger came and said, the fire of God fell from the heavens. Another messenger came and said, the Chaldeans formed 3 raiding parties. Yet another messenger came and said, a mighty wind swept in from the desert and struck the 4 corners of the house. And you thought you had had a bad day. Messenger after messenger after messenger coming in talking about how awful his life was about to become. One day he will lose all his financial stability and his kids. The only thing he's left are 3 terrible friends and a wife who tells him, curse God and die. He's probably like, well, God, why didn't you take them also? I mean, it's already been bad enough. It's like Job is in the middle of the ocean, and every time he catches his breath, another wave comes in and knocks him down. And then he goes to catch his breath, and another wave comes in and knocks him down. I watched a video about a lady. This was on YouTube, and a lady saw these horses off in the distance. And it was at this farm, and she got excited because she'd never seen horses up close. She goes running to go pet the horses, and she touches the fence, and it's an electric fence. And she gets blown back. Here's the worst part. Her husband is filming the whole thing, and he knows it's an electric fence, and he's doing like commentary on it. I think the next video was their divorce. It's like, you're over. But that's how Job had to have felt. Here he was running towards life, and everything felt like happily ever after, and all of a sudden he gets clotheslined by tragedy. Think about it. He was the richest. He was the most blessed. He had everything going up and to the right, and then out of nowhere, everything falls apart. Have you ever been there? Have you ever felt like, man, my life couldn't get any better? This is so great. And then everything just gets pulled from under you. Tragedy. And Job, he puts his disappointment like this. Yet when I hoped for good, evil came. When I looked for light, then came darkness. Job chapter 30, verse 26. I looked for good. I hoped for good, and yet I was slapped in the face. The book of Job is 42 chapters long. 40 chapters of it is him wrestling, trying to figure out why is this happening in my life. Trying to make sense of God's love and his life, his theology, and reality. When Job first gets hit by life's tragedy, he responds, Job chapter 1, verse 21, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. May the name of the Lord be praised. This has to be the most spiritually mature, knee-jerk reaction to tragedy I have ever read. This is like graduate level response. Like how many of us worship in response to the tragedies of life? Job's like, hey, God didn't owe me any of this stuff. All of it was on loan. I was just a steward of it. I'm going to worship God in defiant praise. Put 1 billion people in his sandals and they would not respond the same way. I know I wouldn't. I know my knee-jerk reaction isn't always to praise and worship. Thank you, God. I just stubbed my toe. I've stubbed my toe a lot of times, and that's usually not my knee-jerk reaction. Thank God for another bill. Thank God my coffee just spilled. Thank God I have the chills. Thank God my internet's sitting still. Thank God for the kids I want to kill, metaphorically. I don't think most of us respond the same way that Job does. Job responds with this graduate level worship and praise. But it's not just a book of worship. It doesn't end with that. It's a book of wrestling. Yes, he starts in worship, but that is not his demeanor or his attitude the entire book. Have you read the whole thing? It starts in worship and quickly becomes, God, I wish you would have just allowed me to die at birth. Just take my life. He struggles. A popular TV show described Job's life in the 1990s. Now, this is a story all about how my life got turned upside down. Too soon. Things were so bad that even Bob Ross's happy trees were on fire. That's how bad it was in Job's life. One of the worst things about suffering is that you don't know how long it's going to last. It's open-ended. Something happens in your life and the doctor's like, 2 years. And then it's like 10 years later. You don't always know how long the difficulty is going to be, how long the suffering is going to be, and it makes it harder. In Job chapter 6, verse 11 through 12, it says, what strength do I have that I should still hope? What prospects that I should be patient with? Do I have the strength of stone? Is my flesh bronze? I love that question. What kind of strength do I have? Do I have the strength of stone, God, that you're allowing all this to happen to me? Job is trying to think of the strongest material he can think of at the time. For him, that was a rock. Do I have the strength of a rock? We would say like diamond or carbon or vibranium or something like that, but he doesn't know about those things. So, do I have the strength of a rock? Job doesn't feel strong enough to endure this situation. If you put his challenges on one side and his strength on the other side, he feels like the challenges are 10 and his strength is a 1. That he doesn't have what it takes to endure what he's going through. He feels overwhelmed. People say all the time that God will never give you more than you can handle. That is not in the Bible. That is a false nomer. God will give you things you can't handle so that you have to rely on him so that you can handle it through him. All throughout the Bible, God gives people things they can't handle, so they have to turn to him, so they can't do it in their own strength, so that he can carry them and help them through that situation. And the same thing is true in our own lives. Now, there is a verse that says he won't allow you to be tempted beyond what you can bear, but that is not the same thing. There are times where God will allow you to face things that you cannot handle on your own, and it's the point. That you need God to help you get through that situation. In chapter 6, Job asks, what kind of strength do I have? But by the time he gets to chapter 16, verse 7, he says, God, you have worn me out. Have you ever been there? Job is a lament. It is unedited, raw. Job pouring his heart out to God. God, you have worn me out. We've gone 10 rounds, and I was ready to quit at the first round. Why are you doing this to me? Prolonged suffering is exhausting. It's one thing to stub your toe. It's another thing to stub it every day for a year. At some point, you're like, just take my foot. I don't want to have to keep stubbing my toe over and over and over and over again. This is unfair. When I was a kid, one of our teachers asked us how many of us could hold a book out like this. And a couple of us raised our hand like, yeah, we could do that. It's super simple. I mean, books aren't all that heavy, so we get out there and we hold the book out. And at first it is easy. But then gravity kicks in. And this is back when teachers were allowed to torture people. And gravity kicks in, and that book starts getting heavier and heavier. And all of a sudden, your shoulders start burning, and your arms start shaking like little earthquake tremors. And you're looking over at Pigtail Kelly, and you're like, there's no way I'm going to let her beat me. And then it's like, why are girls so much better at this than I am? And then all of a sudden, the book hits the ground. When we first start suffering, we're like, I got this. It's no big deal. I'm dantastic. But then after a while, that suffering begins to wear you down, and it's like paper cuts on your soul. It just eats away at you, and you start waking up with bitterness, and you start waking up not feeling like you're very hopeful, and you start feeling like all the best days are in the past. And God, you've worn me out. Why? Why are you allowing this to happen in my life? You see, when I first got hypervagatonia, and the doctor's like, 2 years, no big deal. First, I was like, I got this. I got the God of the universe on my side. On the other side of the desert is always promised land. On the other side of testing is blessing. And I would do all those little Christian mantras, like, yeah. But as the 2 years went by, in Job chapter 7, verse 3, it says, I have been allotted months of futility, and nights of misery have been assigned to me. We don't know exactly how long Job went through this, but we know it was no 24-hour bug. He says, I went through months of futility, months of waking up and feeling like, man, is this ever going to go away? And when you go through thing after thing after thing, it's a lot like as an adult, when you're like, I'm gonna go jogging. I'm gonna take up exercise again. I'm gonna go for a jog. And when I was a kid and my legs were shorter, and I could do a mile no problem, my legs are longer now, so a mile should be no big deal. And then you make it to the mailbox, and you feel like you got to dial 911. You're like, how am I ever going to get around this block? And that mailman looks like he's in shape. I'm going to jump on his back. Maybe I can pay the mailman. What makes Job's suffering worse is the 3 friends that come to, quote, help him. Everyone do quotes. Job's friends are going to help him. How many of you guys have ever met someone whose helping feels like hurting? How many have ever been in a church where their helping feels like hurting? Known a few of those, and they're all on Facebook. Job chapter 2, verse 11. When Job's 3 friends, Eliphaz the Temanite, notice where each of these people are from, Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite, none of them are Israelites, heard about all the troubles that had come upon him. They set out from their homes and met together by agreement to go on and sympathize with him and comfort him. This sounds so promising. 3 friends coming out to help out a brother. They're like, the 3 musketeers, all for one and one for all. But then they turn out to be like the 3 stooges, coming with slaps and pokes and kicks. They're really not going to be all that helpful. They end up making Job's suffering worse. It's like Job has a spider on his face, and they're like, hey, let us help you get the spider off your face, and they drop kick him in the face. They kill the spider, but they give him whiplash in the process. They're not very gentle or kind. Job will say in Job chapter 16, verse 2 and 3, I love this, miserable comforters are you all. Don't hold back, Job, just let them know how you feel. Will your long-winded speeches never end? Now, Job is referred to as a patient man, so take that for comfort the next time you let your friends have it. Sometimes friends are not really good friends. They will give 12 speeches during this in 3 cycles, And it's pretty much 2, 4, 6, 8, God is good, God is great, Job, you deserve heaven's hate. That's pretty much their speeches. Is God's really good, God's really great, Job, the problem's with you. Now, to be fair to Job's friends, they were going through what's called a trilemma, based on the philosophy and the theology of the day. They're going through a trilemma, and it's based on 3 points. Number one, the belief that God is just. Number one, God is just. 2, the idea that good things happen to good people and bad things happen to bad people. God is just, good things happen to good people, bad things happen to bad people. Number 3, Job is claiming to be good, which is messing with their theology. Because if Job claims to be good and God is just, but bad things are happening to Job, either God's not just or their idea that good things happen to good people and bad things happen to bad people can't be right. Therefore, Job must be the one who's wrong. Because it's easier to accept that than to accept the alternative. The problem is with you, Job. And so they stop fighting for Job and start fighting with Job. They come with good intentions. At first, they're going to comfort him, but as soon as they start discovering that Job is defending himself, they're like, no, Job, you must be wrong. And so they start fighting with him. They go from friends to frenemies, from defending a position to offending a person. People are the worst. It's Bible. Listen to Job's friend Eliphaz, Job chapter 5, verse 25. You will know that your children will be many, and your descendants like the grass of the earth. Well, that sounds promising, except for Job just buried his kids. Their smell is still on their clothes. You can still hear the bagpipes, Amazing Grace, being played in the background. And Eliphaz comes around, don't worry about them, Job. God's going to give you more kids. How is that a promise? How is that encouraging? Eliphaz, you're a dum-dum. Eliphaz is already talking about the replacement kids. He said, don't focus on what you have lost. Focus on what God's going to bring to you in the future. Eliphaz is the bumper sticker Christian. They always have a trite answer for everything. Sometimes we don't need your trite answer. Sometimes we just need to wrestle and to say, God, this is unfair. Why are you wearing me out? And for you to just quietly sit there and be a source of comfort rather than share your 2 cents. Some of us need to learn from the mistake of Eliphaz. He has a trite answer for everything. I was talking to a friend of mine, and she had a daughter who was pregnant, and she had a stomach bug, and so they were on the way to the hospital, and she couldn't hold anything down, so they had a bucket in the back, and she would relieve herself in the bucket. Well, they get in, the hospital gives her some fluids, they got her feeling better, and they come back out, and the bucket had been left there in 90-degree weather. My friend had to drive with her head out the window the whole way home. I would have been going through like one of those car washes with the windows down. But Eliphaz would have been, don't worry about the smell. God's going to give you a brand new car someday. Now, how does that help you in the moment? Even if it's true that you're getting a brand new car someday, how does that help you with the smell and the reality of what you're dealing with right now? It doesn't. It's not helpful. There's a time to grieve and a time to hope. There's a time to grieve and a time to hope. There's a time to empathize and a time to motivate. What Eliphaz said wasn't entirely wrong. In Job chapter 42, he does end up with more kids. What he says isn't completely inaccurate. But the right thing and the wrong time is the wrong thing. Saying the right thing at the wrong time is the wrong thing. He's like a cheerleader at a funeral. What he is saying comes true, but he is doing damage because he doesn't have the spirit of discernment. Some of us feel like it's our role to be moral cops going around saying right things, but it is in the wrong time and in the wrong spirit, and it's doing damage. And our helping becomes hurting. A mystery in the book of Job is a fourth bonus friend, as if the three weren't good enough, named Elihu. Elihu, Elihu. He doesn't show up until Job chapter 32. At the very beginning, we're told about three friends, and three friends show up. And at the very end, God chastises three friends, but somehow Elihu is not addressed. He's this mystery friend. He shows up in chapter 32, and he shows up with these words, chapter 36, verse 4. He says these words, so he shows up in chapter 36, my bad, and then he says in verse 4, one perfect in knowledge is with you. Yay. One perfect in knowledge is with you. Oh, joy. Elihu talks for 6 chapters. A 6-long chapter monologue, as if Job has not had enough of the other guys. A tweet is 280 characters. A blog is 500 words. An article is 900 words. And he will talk for 2,181 words. His name should have been Anywho, because that's what my wife says when she doesn't like what you're saying. Anywho, and I hear it a lot. We were out to dinner last night, and this couple were like laughing. I was having them laugh, and my wife just looks at me and goes, anywho. She's just immune to it at this point. But he should have just been called Anywho. And the funny thing is that God starts talking right after Elihu. It's almost as if God is saying, I've had enough of all this nonsense. Now I'm going to talk. You guys have all messed it up trying to represent me, and your theology's all jacked up. Let me speak into the situation. These guys are terrible friends, but they started with good intentions. But in trying to make Job feel better, they make Job feel worse. They're more concerned about defending God than they are helping out Job. And God shows them, says, I don't need your defense. I am more than capable of defending myself. The only thing they got right is they showed up. They will sit with him quietly for 7 days, and they should have kept it that way. In fact, there's a thing in Jewish culture called sitting sevens. And it's highly respected. You come and you sit alongside of a person and you grieve with them, and they got that right. But then they open their mouths. Their Sunday school answers for why Job is suffering wasn't helpful, because suffering doesn't always equal sinning. Suffering doesn't always equal sinning. Sometimes it does. Sometimes there's a direct correlation between what you've done and the consequences of what you're experiencing, but that's not always the case. Bad things happen to good people, and good things happen to bad people because we live in a broken world. The world is not as it was meant to be. In fact, Job is known for 4 things. It's emphasized right at the beginning so that we don't make the mistake of thinking that he is suffering because of his being bad. Job chapter 1, verse 1 says, in the land of Uz there lived a man whose name was Job. This man was what? Blameless. Everyone say it with me. Upright. Feared God. And shunned evil. He's known for 4 things, and this list is repeated 3 different times early on to reinforce it for us. He is known for being blameless. He is known for being upright. He's known for fearing God, and he's known for fighting evil. Job was buff spiritually. And when a person walks into a room and they're buff, all eyes are on them. I know from walking into rooms with Pastor Jason. Everyone knows my wife opens the ketchup bottle at home. Job has no secret sin, so to speak, no ancestral curse. That's not what's going on. Job is suffering because God allowed him to suffer. Job is suffering because God allows him to suffer. Everything in our lives is Father filtered. Job is the greatest man on the east side because his eyes were always on the God of the north side. His eyes were always on God. He's not going to suffer because he did something wrong. He's going to suffer because he did something right. The church does a disservice to people when we add psychological and spiritual trauma, making a person feel like it's some secret sin or something that's going on that we just got to help them figure out. It's some demon, it's some curse, it's something, when in reality it's often because it's just a broken world and it's unfair. And we should just come alongside of them and just be a source of comfort rather than making it worse. When they make the person question, and I think that oftentimes Job, we read it for a philosophical answer when we should be reading it for a psychological answer of how do I be a better friend? Because that's what the emphasis is placed in the book of Job. The book of Job is all about how the friends get it wrong and how God corrects them at the end. Sometimes we suffer because of stupid decisions, but most of the time we suffer because of a broken world. Life is often like a cruel version of a TV game show, Wheel of Misfortune. The price is wrong. No deal or no deal. Or Family Feud. You don't have to change that one. That's just automatically bad. When we think about God's blessings, we think about God's provision and his protection. And when we first meet Job, we feel like, man, he is the most blessed person on this earth. He's the blessed man on the east side. He's so wealthy, banks can take loans from him. But we're going to find out that his suffering is also a blessing. We assume that when good things happen, God likes me, and when bad things happen, God doesn't like me. But it's not that simple. It's not like Job lost all of God's favor as soon as everything started falling apart in his life. God says to Satan, have you considered my servant Job? God's the one who points him out. Have you considered my servant Job? He's righteous, he's upright, he fears God, and shuns evil. God singles Job out because of how impressed he is with Job, which makes me kind of want to be second place spiritually. Like, I want to do awesome, but always like have another person ahead of me, like Donna Cole. So I got someone else could take the test, but I don't want to have to. The dictionary defines favor as two things. First, approval, support, or liking for someone or something. Number two, an act of kindness beyond what is due or is usual. We all want the second definition, but it's the first definition that matters most. And Job never loses God's approval in this process. He just loses some things. And more importantly, some family. And there's some deep hurt and some deep sorrow. But Job never loses God's approval or support. Job may feel like all he does is lose, lose, lose no matter what, but spiritually he's gaining territory. We don't talk about Job because he was the best man on the east side. We talk about Job because of his sufferings and because of what he experienced through it and what we learn because of it. I would argue that Job's season of suffering was one of the greatest blessings in his life. And I know that's easy to say as the outside looking in. Job wouldn't have said it. But I think it's one of the best things that happened to him because it created the greatest kingdom impact. His influence is increased because of his loss. We wouldn't be talking about him this morning if all he did was remain the greatest man in the east side and was never touched by the world's problems. We wouldn't have known about him. He would have been lost to history. He earns a sacred spot in Scripture because of what he struggles with and because of what he goes through. And I don't say this lightly. At one point, Job says, "Oh, that my words were recorded, that they were written on a scroll." And that became true in the book of Job. The book of Job reminds us that we should be slow to throw around who has the favor of God and who doesn't. We should be slow to label people as having the favor of God and not having the favor of God. Sometimes favor comes disguised as failure. Sometimes it comes disguised as sickness. Sometimes it comes disguised as setbacks. Job will become one of the only 3 men of righteousness in the Old Testament. Ezekiel outlined 3 men of righteousness, and Job is one of them. Daniel, Noah, and Job. Out of all the people in the Old Testament, they're the only 3 who are listed. And when Jesus' brother is pointing back to the person who models patience and perseverance, who does he point back to? Job. Out of all the options, Job is singled out. Now, I would love to have the endorsement of God and the brother of Jesus. I would love to have a little business card that says Dan Stanford endorsed by God and Jesus' brother James. When I'm sitting down for a job interview, flash that card. Get pulled over by the cops, flash that card. Me and my wife are arguing and she's winning, flash that card. But perhaps that's why I don't have one of those cards, because I would abuse it. But would I be willing to pay the price that Job paid? Because the endorsement of God became because of the endurance of Job. The endorsement of God became because of the endurance of Job. God tends to invest in those he can trust. You see, when we suffer, we tend to ask the question, can I trust God? But the question should be, can God trust me? See, the Bible never really answers the question of why we suffer. It's one of the frustrating things about the book of Job. God does show up and he has this long conversation with him, but he never directly answers the question of why bad things happen to good people. The question that is never answered is why, but the question that is answered is what? What do I do in response to my suffering? How am I going to use my suffering to be a blessing in the life of others? Because when we suffer, what do we tend to do? We all tend to go inward. Why? But we don't experience any real growth or progress until we start turning it outward. And how can I come alongside of other people who are hurting? How can I use my suffering to create a sense of empathy and come alongside of other people? Because here's the reality. Every one of us have been touched by pain. All of us will suffer. All of us will hurt. You don't escape this world without it because the world is broken. But I would rather suffer with God than suffer without God. Amen. I'd rather come alongside a community of sufferers and let's turn crosses into gardens. Let's bring beauty out of pain. Let's look for opportunities to come alongside of others and not be a friend like Eliphaz and Bildad and Zophar and Elihu and whoever else you want to throw out there. But let's be a friend like Job. Let's be a friend like Donna. Let's be a friend like Pastor Jason. Let's be a friend that comes alongside and doesn't say dumb stuff, but is the hands and feet of Jesus.